Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the premiere episode of Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success, which is the name of the podcast. I am Tiffany Swedensky, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this first episode, you probably already know me. So, but just to give an overview for anyone else who's coming in day one, doesn't know a whole lot about me. Um, so I've been working in legal marketing for the last 10 years. And I got a lot of my experience working for Ben Glass, Brian Glass at Great Legal Marketing. And since then, I'm a fractional CMO for law firms, and I work with mostly personal injury firms throughout the country. A lot of people who know me will talk to you about my deep background in like technical marketing or digital marketing. I'm a full stack web developer. I have all of that expertise. So a lot of times I get questions about paid digital ads, websites, search engine optimization. But for the most part, I focus on getting more clients for law firms. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. My company is called Sharp Cookie, and I'm not accepting new clients at this time. So that's all you pretty much need to know about me for the moment. Joining me here today is Kristine. Kristine's a longtime friend. We knew each other in high school. Actually, we didn't know each other in high school. We went to the same high school and we knew each other in college. And Kristine is somebody that I consider an expert, who is an expert in just generally like dealing with people, working with people. She's somebody I go to for advice on pretty much anything interpersonal because she's the only person I know who's not crazy, I think. And I don't know, most people I ask for advice. Like if I call my mom and ask her advice is just straight up nuts. But but Kristine, also you also have an MBA and a deep background in customer service and leading and managing teams. I know there's only so much I can say about that, but I'll let you kind of take it from here if you want to add anything to that.
That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I'm an expert customer. So if you think about kind of what makes people tick, kind of like what triggers a person's interest in the consumer industry, sort of really deep diving into what makes up a person's purchasing decisions. That's really what I've spent the last decade plus really diving into and learning all about. And I think I really enjoy it. It's kind of become a hobby of mine, and it's interesting too, because I'll see ads and I'm just like, oh, I see what they're trying to do there. But not everybody does. So I'm really glad, I'm really honored to be pulled into this project because I want people to be more aware of where their triggers are coming from. And it's okay if you end up choosing that as a purchasing decision. We're not trying to steer you one way or the other. We just want to put it out there on the table so that you are aware of what you're buying yourself into.
Yeah. So, Kristine, we talked a little bit about before we started recording, basically the format of the podcast, and we do have one, but I think we're going to kind of free flow through a few topics today. Two topics. One, which is at the top of my LinkedIn feed for some reason, actually for very good reason, is Google's. It's called Google SGE, or it's generative search experience, which is essentially Google's response to ChatGPT taking up a lot of their market. And so Google, like I'll give you some stuff of what I know here. Google really raced off with AI. Like they put a huge team of people working on AI after ChatGPT came out because Google wanted to stay ahead of ChatGPT and probably felt like they were losing some ground. And so somebody at Google came out on social media over the weekend and just basically said that Google is like recklessly investing in AI and just doing their best to come up with. I think what they're all kind of going for is like a Jarvis type or a personal assistant that you can talk to on your phone. That's better than Siri or Bixby or whatever. And so anyway, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in this space, but one thing that's really fun to play around with is their generative search experience. And we pulled this up earlier. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm assuming we'll be able to share this on like some of our visual platforms. But if you're just listening, then you'll have to take my word that we're looking at a search engine result page, and this is
You
all
want to know how to
generated.
make $1 million?
Oh, how to make $1 million? Oh,
Let's do that. I wanted to, if it's so intuitive and it knows what it's talking about, tell me how to make $1 million.
let's do that. Starting a business, starting a business is probably the fastest way to make $1 million according to Google's generative search experience. Um, and I mean, yeah, I mean, starting a business is probably a way to do it.
I'm glad I got my degree in what I did then.
Yeah. Identify a profitable niche, invest early. I mean, that doesn't really help you a whole lot. I mean, it is true. And then be patient. I'm not
Ooh,
sure
I
that
like how
that's
it
the
says other
advice.
ways is to invest in real estate. You know who the biggest real estate owner is in the world?
Wait, hold on. I think I know this. Um, no, actually, okay, I can't guess. What is that?
McDonald's.
Oh, wait. Yeah, 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 yeah. Because in their franchise model is actually like based on real estate somehow, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, because
Yeah.
the more land you own, the more opportunity you have to serve burgers to people. So they have the most real estate. They're like the biggest real estate industry in the world.
I mean, investing in real estate is a big way to make money. Like, it's hard to get into the market these days, but like, yeah, I mean, that's more so than I mean, the advice like for the SGE is giving you is pretty like I mean, I don't find this to be very helpful. I'd be curious to see what goes into the
Selling
articles.
online courses. Oh my gosh, that's like being an influencer. Start
I mean, that is like
freelancing.
I mean, honestly, like I have some courses that I try to sell and things like that. But I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna
Be an
make $1 million
influencer on that
on it
list.
though. Huh?
Oh my gosh. It said be an influencer on that list, second to last one. Try coaching or consulting. All of this seems like what we're trying to do right now.
We're trying to make $1 million, Christine.
I
I
just
mean,
don't have any real estate. I mean, I have my house, you have yours, but we're no McDonald's.
I know. Well, let's not get into why I should be investing in real estate. And then somebody's gonna pop off and tell me, "Oh, it's not that great," and it's like, okay, whatever. How to make $1 million? Uh, so
So
I
let's
guess
how can we use this? How can I as a consumer use this better?
well, I don't know if I have advice on how to use it better. Honestly, I'm kind of curious, like, how would you use this? Like, would you use this to get advice on building a business, or are you going to use this to, like, for more practical things? I know this weekend, something I did over the weekend was I tried to update my privacy settings on Facebook. And there was a particular setting I was looking for, and I got tired of clicking around Facebook. And so I typed into Google, like, how to find privacy settings on Facebook. And so the search, the SGE, the AI overview or whatever, it generated a set of instructions. And then below it, there was a set of instructions from Facebook itself on how to do it. Now, the instructions from Facebook itself were accurate and it guided me to actually finding it. But what the AI actually generated was not accurate. It was like making up steps to like how you would theoretically update the setting in Facebook. And so
Why do you,
that was
where do you think it's
interesting.
pulling the information from? Do you think it's pulling the
So
information from people that are just like, here's my opinion on it?
it's pulling so what we've heard, like ChatGPT predominantly was I mean, it was trained on internet data, but a huge source of information for it was Reddit. And the same thing for Google. Like most of the best and most popular Google results are actually Reddit results. And then Google's used Reddit to train its AI tool. So a lot of times it's Reddit. Um, I'll tell you the truth though, like there's this gal I follow on LinkedIn. Her name is Lily Ray, and she's talking a lot about this right now and posting a lot about this. She's huge in this space. And she hasn't given too many details yet, but like she has said that Google is pulling from like I know you're not like super into the SEO space. So I'm explaining this to you and then I guess explaining it to people listening. But like so how Google decides what ranks here is different from how they like what ranks in the AI overview or in the generative search results is different from what ranks in what you might consider like their traditional SEO results. So we're scrolling down and MarshallBrain.com has an article titled "How to Make $1 Million," and that article, um, I'd have to open it up and look, but it's probably supplied a lot of the data for this generative search experience. But interesting, like Google punished a lot of websites, quote unquote, punished a lot of websites recently for having too many AI written articles on their sites for essentially being spam. And so like a lot of people just started mass generating content for their websites using ChatGPT, using programmatic AI to generate all these articles. And then back in March, Google comes up and says, we've had enough, slaps all these businesses and websites that used AI to that degree, which is an extreme degree. And they went from being in position number one in Google to being de-indexed, basically. So now their content doesn't show up. So Google did that back in March. And so now spam content shows up supposedly less in the real results. But interestingly enough, in this generative search experience, those articles are still ranking. And so we're in that classic conundrum of where we have AI written content feeding an AI model, and then it's generating results based on just basically the spam that Google has already punished and has already said, like, your website can't show up in our traditional search results anymore, but we're still going to use it for generative search experience. So it's kind of interesting how it's all shaking out and what Google is using and what they're not using.
Yeah, I always kind of I always use it for like, how do I do something on my phone? Most of the time it's how do I perform a master reset? Like now I feel like I could do that in my sleep. But how do I reconfigure my AP and my access point names? These are not things that people just like, oh, I know how to do that. So, and it's a multi-step process. So whatever the steps come up, you got to make sure that you're following the right steps. Otherwise, you could really mess up your phone. So I always kind of like, I always look at the suggestive and then I find an article that is actually linked to the manufacturer themselves. Like I always try and find something that even though Google will come up with its initial list, like its recommended thing, sometimes it's right. But if it's not something I'm familiar with, I gotta make sure that I go to the source.
Well, so one thing I wanted to ask, like, as far as like SG, I mean, we talked about this, but my audience is mostly, I'm going to stop sharing. We've talked about this, but my audience is mostly attorneys and law firms, personal injury law firms. And I think a lot of them, I mean, a lot of them are worried about AI kind of existentially. So they're essentially worried about like, how is AI going to change the nature of personal injury law, or personal injury attorneys even going to be needed anymore? A lot of questions in that space. So everyone being really kind of self-reflecting about AI, if they're going to be useful in the future. But like what I'm kind of curious about, like, is this going to have any effect over, you know, if people seek out attorneys? Like, Christine, as an adult, somebody who's, I don't want to say been around the block, it's never too, but as somebody who's like lived in this world, like if you were in a car accident tomorrow, God forbid, and you broke your arm, are you gonna use Google search experience to find an attorney? Or are you gonna look for, I mean, how is this gonna play into your decision making at all? Is it all?
So I think that if I didn't know anybody, if I didn't have any kind of like personal insight into who or what my options were, I probably would. In fact, I might even like still, if somebody even recommends someone, I'm going to be like, okay, do they have reviews on Google? Do they have a website? Do they have a way that's the only way that I can look into people's background, like do any research is through Google. It is through online sources of some kind. And Google's so accessible and public and familiar to everyone that it's kind of like that easy, comfortable source to go back to for whatever you need. For me anyway. I mean, but I've been around it forever. I remember when Google first launched on the internet. I remember that. Before that, it was Ask Jeeves.
Oh my gosh,
And
they're right.
what was even before that? There was
I mean, there's AOL. I want to say AOL, but like at that point, I didn't even use computers that much as a kid, so I can't even say.
well, I remember whenever Google first came out and we started
Yahoo.
asking it stuff. Yahoo, yeah, Yahoo was the big one. Um, but yeah, like when Google first came out, it was everyone just started using it. And that was how many years ago? Like 20 plus years ago. So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be 37 this year. So that was most of my adult life, my child, adolescent, young adult, and adult life was with Google. And so it's so familiar to me, but I still talk to people daily who are older and they're in a older generation. They're not comfortable with it. And it's so funny. I'm going to quote my mother on this. There was one time when I said, just Google it. And she goes, see, your Google isn't the same as my Google. And I was like, oh
That's
my
so cute.
God. Oh my God. The children. That's the thing. They're not familiar. They're not comfortable with it as we are.
And that, I mean, my own mom, God bless, like, I still have to, like, she'll try to get me to book her flights if she can get away with it. Like, she'll send me a text message and be like, "Hey, can you book me a flight?" And I'll start booking and be like, "Wait a minute, you're an adult. You can book your own flight." But,
I remember my mother used to tell me, look it up. And now I'm like, look it up.
look it up, figure out how to do it. Well, so, I mean, I guess, well, something that I do know that maybe you wouldn't necessarily know, and just the data shows within personal injury marketing that only about one third of people will find their attorney via Google. The rest primarily are asking for friends and family for a referral for a law firm.
Yeah, because everybody, I mean, the legal trouble is so common. There's so many different attorneys out there. Like a personal injury attorney would probably not be the same attorney that
Is
you
that a
would want
puppy?
defending. It is. Hey, Django, come here. There was somebody at my door probably selling stuff, but here's
Oh,
my giant dog. Hey, bud, over. Nope. Okay. All right. Nah, look at it. In and out. Sometimes he'll see his nose. He'll just go and I'll just push him back. It's fine. Um, but yeah, there's definitely if somebody has like a common friend or relative resource, whatever, they're like, oh, they went through something similar. What did you use? So if they saw the result that they wanted, like, oh, hey, went with this lawyer and he went to jail, maybe I'll look for somebody else. But if they're like, oh, he used this lawyer and he didn't, he had a pretty good outcome, he didn't stay out of jail. Maybe I'll go use the same one. So I think a lot of it does also have to do, and everybody's always so quick to give advice. If I'm ever like, oh, I got in a car accident, I'm gonna have to laugh. Just whoever is in the vicinity is gonna jump in and be like, oh, you should go with this person. No, you should do this. You should do this. You should do that. Everybody's so quick to give advice. It's easy to get completely flooded and surrounded with options and information before you even go to search Google. But I don't know. Everybody's a little bit different. I'm the kind of person that a bunch of people start diving in with advice, and I'm just like, okay, let me now to go do my thing.
yeah. I just never thought of it like that. Cause like if you have been like injured and you start looking for referrals, you're probably not just asking one person, you're probably asking a bunch and you're getting like a bunch of different. I mean, I did have that experience recently, trying to select a surgeon for my knee. So I guess I never thought of it like that, but you're getting multiple recommendations. Who are you calling first? Are you calling the one with the best Google reviews or from the person who you trust the most?
Okay, so probably the person that I would trust the most, honestly, and it might be. So I'm thinking about that. That's a good question because if it was who would I call? Who is available now, right now? I would probably call my boyfriend's father because he has a background and a history and an experience with the government system and lawyers and dealing with, legality and things like that. Now, if I didn't know my boyfriend's father, if it was just like me and who I can like draw from my past, like my life, I would probably call my mom. Like if my dad were still around, I'd call my dad. I'd probably be like, "This is what happened. Oh, what do I do?" 'Cause and it depends on that person too, because maybe my mom would know someone. Oh yeah, my friend so and so had a similar thing happen, and they went with blah 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 blah. And then okay, now I'm probably going to go look them up, and I might be a little bit more inclined. But the original source came from my mother. Now, on the other hand, like if my father was still alive, he'd probably be like, I don't know, like go, you need to go look it up, you need to go figure that out. So it kind of depends on the experience that and the advice that you get from the people that you trust the most. Because it's a scary world, and you don't want to walk that path alone. People are naturally social creatures that are inclined to draw off the experience of each other, whether we are forced to do it or not. But it is something that it's kind of like a like a preservation, like a you gotta start from somewhere. So you start off of the experience from somebody that you trust the most.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, for most people, like, even if you can Google something, like, a lot of people will still ask another human being. And I've been in the position where, like, I've had an employee come to me and ask me a question like they could have Googled, and I get a little bit annoyed. But ultimately, like, you have to, like, okay, but they don't trust Google the way that they might trust Tiffany or they might trust Christine. That's the reason they're coming to us and asking. It's not that they don't know how to use Google. It's just there's something to going to another person and saying, like, hey, there's a lot more trust there. And then so, it's important to keep that in mind. A lot of the attorneys I work with, they get so caught up in how their website is performing in Google and how they're showing up compared to competitors. And it's important. And I mean, I'm in marketing, so that's my business. But, you know, at the same time, like, referrals are a huge part of what we do in legal marketing. So, like, nurturing the people like your mom, or even like your oh shoot, or nurturing people like your mom or your boyfriend's father, who know attorneys, but maybe you need to remind them to keep top of their minds. So you send them things, you send them gifts, you send them Christmas cards, you send them things so they'll remember you and your law firm. And so it just comes all back to good old fashioned networking, which is always king in kind of these sort of things. Um,
Yeah, and especially because you mentioned, the 2 people that I used as an example, they're very different backgrounds. Like, my boyfriend's father has that political background, so it makes sense if people, like, sent him things. Now, like, my mom, if she ever dealt with a lawyer, it's probably, like when my father passed away, obviously, they had to, transfer ownership and equity and power of attorney and that kind of stuff. Like, she did have to step in, but those lawyers probably are not going to be reaching out and contacting her. So because they have such a big client, like they're the market, like people need that service all the time. So I mean, they kind of have a revolving door, if you will, of customers. Whereas if it's like a defense attorney, or if it's, like a workplace attorney, maybe that's a little bit more uh, selective. Like, you don't have as many. I don't know. I could only imagine there's probably a lot more like traffic accident attorneys than there are, criminal defense attorneys.
Actually, I don't know. So as far as like the difference between like personal injury and criminal defense, I'll have to Google that. I don't know if there's more of one than the other. But I do know what I do know is that a lot of these attorneys pretty much, like, a lot of people assume about attorneys what you just assume, which is like they're busy and they're probably not reaching out and sending out cards and stuff because, they're a revolving door of clients. And that's what ends up, that's how so many law firms end up with just no referrals from former clients because they don't do that good legwork and, sending out cards or reaching out to former client list and getting those referrals. And honestly, like, that's hard. It's easy to set up a Google PPC campaign. I could set these things up in my sleep these days. But like, whether or not it's as effective as, sending out a Christmas card every year, sending out a birthday card, that's something else. And then there's reaching out to other professionals, which is just like a huge part of this. Um, so we started talking about the generative search experience and then transition into talking about referrals, which I imagine is going to happen a lot when we talk about tech and how important it is to legal marketing. Um, but so the main topic of this podcast, like whenever you and I talked last week and we're like, what are we talking about on Monday? I guess to start, local service ads, I'm sure most of you know, but I'll explain it to Christine. Local service ads is kind of Google's. answer to their own PPC platform. So you have Google Ads, which is where a lot of businesses go and invest way too much money to get kind of bullshit leads. And that's my professional opinion of it. Um, and I mean, probably works better if you're not in legal. It probably works better if you're selling a product or a service or something like that. But for lawyers, Google ads, traditional Google ads can be a huge waste of money. But Google did come out with something called local service ads several years ago. And local service ads, when it was released to law firms, it immediately became known as the cheaper and more simpler alternative to Google Ads. It's simple enough that most law firms can handle it in house on their own. And it is also very cost effective because we're not paying, $3,000, $5,000 per lead as we do in Google Ads. It's actually much cheaper than that. We're paying something like $1,200 per lead. Just to give you, Christine and I, a sense of like how expensive the space can be. Essentially, like with local service ads, what they do is they're supposed to show up at the top of Google, like before the Google ads, before the map pack, which is the traditional kind of map pack that you're talking about, um, shows up at the very top. And these are going to be for what are known as high intent searches. So these are searches that when somebody is using them in Google, we're relatively sure that they're ready to make like a purchase decision. And for attorneys, that basically means they're ready to call us and start the intake process. Um, but for another business, if you're selling refrigerators or if you're in refrigerator repair, your high intent keyword is going to be refrigerator repair service near me. That's when somebody is interested and they need somebody to come and fix their refrigerator, as opposed to what is maybe like a low intent search, which is why is my ice maker not working? How could I fix my ice maker? How do I change a water filter? Those are more like those are not of as high intent because they haven't really displayed an interest in actually completing a purchase or buying a service. So local
So
service ads
money is
kind
the
of
key thing.
yeah. It's where they're at in the buyer's journey is probably the more politically correct way of putting it. So like somebody who's like in the awareness stage, that traditional like customer journey funnel, this is not that. It's when they're almost ready to buy. That's the high intent kind of search stuff.
That makes sense because if you're thinking about like, how do I fix my ice machine? Your machine might be broken, but your final decision might be to purchase a fridge, but you're not going to get those. Hey, your ice machine is broken and you're trying to fix it. Here's a new fridge that's going to prioritize itself up to the top.
Well, and it also depends on how the business has structured their marketing. So like there is a world in theory where like let's say so the search term is like how do I negotiate with the insurance company? That's like the search term that we're targeting. Attorney could theoretically target that keyword and say, like, whenever somebody starts searching for this keyword, I want to show them ads of my face and my law firm that says, in a car accident, hire an attorney now, 1,000 years of experience. Um, and you can actually do that in a lot of Google ads, but that's traditional Google ads. Local service ads, it's strictly for that high intent, like they're getting ready to call a lawyer because they need a lawyer kind of stuff. Um, and Google uses the information that's on the attorney's Google business listing, which is what you see come up in the map pack. And also their ratings, whatever they have there, and their Google ratings. And some other information about your firm that's pre-selected. There's not a whole lot of ways to like customize local service ads for a law firm. Um, so it's all like toggle switches, uploading a headshot, really simple stuff. And yeah, so in local service ad, in personal injury law right now, I think biggest bang for your buck. And that's not like revolutionary. You probably heard like you listener probably heard a lot of people say that. I know like me personally, like I'm seeing tremendous results with this for most of my clients who are using them. And there's one client in particular. It's only halfway through May, and we've already signed 4 cases from local service ads, which is pretty good. And for a paid PPC space, where sometimes we're lucky to get 1 case, a month, and here we're on track to get like 2 or 3 a week, which is really good. You know, so
Something's working there.
yeah, it's something's working. And as always, like when it comes to local service ads, it depends on how much you want to spend. It depends on how many reviews you have, like what your online reputation is. And then it also depends on the subtle soft signals that we send to Google. And that last part is, well, the reviews are a huge part of it. Any business needs a ton of reviews in this to show up well in local service ads. But then it's like the soft signals that we send Google as we're interfacing with this ads platform, which sounds like voodoo. It sounds like, honestly, we're doing like some weird voodoo stuff. But it's so intricate. It's like how quickly you respond in the dashboard. You get like a notification of a new lead. The call has come into your law firm. How quickly you respond in the dashboard to it will determine how many more leads Google might send you. And so if you never log in, you never update the dashboard, they'll stop sending you leads, which is kind of crazy. So it,
Google
you
has
know,
skin in this game too because they want their recommendations to pay off and they want the people that are using the platform, the search engine, to be satisfied with the results. So there is also a stake in the game for Google to only prioritize up to the top the businesses and the advertisers that are gonna deliver.
yeah. One of the reports that I read recently, when somebody is selecting a law firm, one of their number one things is responsiveness. So how much they respond while they're working on a case, and then just responsiveness in general. And that also seems to be a huge thing here in Google. Like Google has maybe taken that advice and said, like, okay, like people want responsive businesses. They don't want to call a business and then hear back 3 days later. They want immediate, immediate, immediate. So they reward that immediacy, it seems. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would. Yeah, like timeliness is everything. Like people don't want to have to feel like they're climbing an uphill battle and that they're taking their entire day. And calling and talking to a stranger about an important matter is anxious. That stems a lot of people's anxiety. So you got to if the easier and the less painful the experience is, that's everything. That's gonna give you better reviews, that's gonna give you more repeat customers, and it's funny, though, because people don't like feeling rushed, but at the same time, they don't wanna be there.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you balance this? You gotta let it be their decision. So it's all about how do you advertise yourself in a space and in a way that allows the consumer to feel like they're in control.
You mentioned one thing that I really did want to, I meant to ask you about ahead of time. If you like, how would you feel like you were in a car accident and, again, like you were hurt, you call a law firm, are you still going to be scared? Like, how are you going to feel?
Oh my gosh, yes. I feel like I'm gonna be. This is my one shot, like Eminem, mom's spaghetti. Like you only get one shot. If I don't sell myself appropriately to this
Why? Why?
rated person,
You're selling
like
yourself to the law firm?
you have to. Because yeah, you got to represent yourself. The first person who represents you in this entire exchange is you, and that puts a lot of pressure on the individual because you may feel a certain way, but it doesn't guarantee that other people are going to feel your passion and how you feel about it and the impact it has, the personal impact to you and your family. So that's why a lot of these people they're trying to find the right person to convince that they are right. And so it's kind of like an like dress rehearsal is over. Like you don't even get to rehearse. Like here it is. Get out and you push out on stage. So that makes a lot of sense that you were nervous, and it's not even something that people even understand either. Like I don't think that a lot of people can explain it, and they're just like, "Why do I feel this way?" And other people, they're mad, and they want to convey, they want to get it right. People are so afraid of getting it wrong and not selling their idea or their passion in the way that they wanted to, or the way that they intended. And so it's like, I got to do it this one time. The pressure's on.
Well, it's very intense phone call, and on the other side of things, like law firms do get a bunch of calls from, and I hate to say it, but people who don't have cases, but they are angry and they are trying to convince somebody that this is an issue for me and I need help. So there is definitely that level of kind of feeling coming into these calls. I guess honestly, like we like on the inside part of it where we're helping like somebody with a good case calls the law firm and talks to us, like, whenever somebody with a good case calls, like we're just like bending over backwards to try to like help them and serve them and try to make them happy and just to make it to where like, God forbid they hang up before we get them to such a fee agreement kind of thing. So, I guess like, people kind of forget like it's nerve wracking. Like I heard like a quote about it from the medical community. It's hysterical people, and which is a terrible word, but this is the word that they use. Hysterical people will react to fake illnesses and real illnesses with the same level of, hysteria. Like, if you're somebody who's going to react badly when you think you're sick, but you're not, you're also going to be somebody who's going to react like badly when you actually are sick. So it's important for doctors to like keep that in mind, when they're dealing with somebody who is just in here for an illness that was all in their head, that this time it might be real because like they react to a real illness in the same way. And so like
Real to them.
it's real to them. And so for, personal injury law, like everyone calls the law firm believing they have a case and it's a big deal and they need help. And, we sometimes forget like how anxious that whole exchange is, which is kind of crazy. No.
Yeah. And a lot, I don't know how much customer service training the people in the law firm or the receptionist or whoever's
It
answering the phone
depends.
has. It
It
depends.
depends.
But there's a lot of people, like, they probably don't have the best interaction on that phone call. I can only imagine. I mean, thank goodness if your firm has someone who's empathetic and somebody who, the best thing that you can do is, first of all, acknowledge how they feel. Like, hey, you have every right to feel this way. Oh my gosh, you've put so much passion and effort into this. I can very much understand why you would want somebody to defend you in this. And then give some kind of ownership. Hey, whatever options are out there, I'm going to be very realistic with you. I'm going to put everything on the table. That way you can make the best decision for you and your family. And as soon as you get that effectively communicated, it lowers the customer's defense and they're a lot more willing to listen to what you have to say. So then you got to let it be their choice. Just because they called you doesn't mean they're ready to move forward yet. That anxiety wall, you may have lowered the defense, but that's whenever you really seal the deal and say, hey, are you with me to kind of explore what we can do here to see what options we might be able to support? And that's when they say, go, yes, yes, I am ready. Let's charge forward. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in that loop where people are like, well, did you hear me say the part about this? Do you know what part? Do you know how much of an impact this had? They're still trying to convince you. If you haven't got that point where you've effectively earned someone's trust, they're going to keep telling you why their reason is valid.
And I mean, this is all important. I mean, it seems like we kind of went off on a tangent, but this is all
We
like,
did.
well, we did, but it's all related because, like, I was talking about local service ads, how it's important to be responsive. And then also, it's important not to blow it on that first phone call, not to like miss calls, missing calls, like from like a robot perspective. Like, when Google sees that you've missed a phone call in local service ads, they're less inclined to send you more leads. And then, yeah.
Can't they also still give reviews? Like, even if they don't get the case, like if they had a bad experience on that first phone call, can't they still give you bad word of mouth?
Oh yeah, they do. And a lot of attorneys will try to dispute those because they weren't actually a customer. But sometimes those disputes go through and sometimes they don't because it honestly kind of depends on the nature of their complaint. But yeah, that's absolutely true.
Whether you're saving it to Google or not, even if Google removes it or keeps it or whatever, you're still out there. Word on the street is.
Yeah. And I mean, Yeah, a lot of us, like a lot of us, I include myself in it. We see a negative review, and our knee jerk reaction is to be like, well, this doesn't represent us. This doesn't, whatever us. But if somebody calls you and their intake team sucked and they didn't really listen, the power is in that person to hang up, call the next law firm, and leave you a bad review. And Google is going to see that. Google, like, there's a human experience here, which we just described, and then there's like the Google algorithm experience, which is going to see that somebody hung up, called another law firm. The Google can tell, if you're going down the list and calling people. They actually have a name for it, which I can't think of off the top of my head.
I would
Um,
imagine they would probably like know every transaction along the way through that whole research, finding somebody, calling, talking, finally settling on someone, going to the location, whatever the case may be. Then suddenly you start calling the same number and you start having longer conversations. They're going to know who you chose. They're going to know who you're giving your money to. Like everything is connected. They see there's a receipt, everything, and conjectural evidence. Conjectural. Did I say that right? All that evidence they can kind of piece together, they can put the puzzle together without having direct access to see your bank information, to see how much money you gave them. Maybe not all that, but they do know that there was a receipt somewhere along the way. And so that's kind of evident enough to know what choices you made. And so that feeds the algorithm too.
well, and think about this. I don't know. Okay, this is pure speculation at this point, but imagine for a second you Google personal injury attorney near me. You call the first law firm in local service ads. They sucked. You called the second one and they were actually really responsive. They picked up the phone immediately. It was a nice transaction. And then next thing you know, in your Gmail, there's an email from that law firm. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a question out there of like how much data can Google store? Because there is like a hardware limit on that. Like, there are only so many data centers. Like out here in Northern Virginia, like land is being bought up left and right. So like Amazon and probably not Google, but mostly Amazon can make these data centers because we're making so much data, and there's only so many places for us to store it. And so like there's a question of like yes, Google can know all this stuff about you, but how much does it retain and store? That's a question mark. But it certainly can kind of assess like how a law firm responds and like ultimately if somebody hires a law firm just based on simply user signals. And, a lot of those simple user signals, namely, specifically responsiveness, that's a huge part in how local service ads performs. And then I mentioned some other things. And just to give people some like practical tips so they don't walk away feeling like I didn't talk about local service ads enough, just some practical stuff. Set your weekly budget super, super high. That's within this space, that's pretty common knowledge, but you set your budget to be like $10,000, $100,000 a week. And then I also recommend, and some people might disagree with me on this, but setting like a max you'll pay per lead, and setting that to be higher than what you're actually paying per lead. Because again, these are all signals we're sending to Google. Like, I'm willing to pay Google money and I'm willing to pay Google a lot of money, and Google loves money. So they'll see those signals and they'll be like, hey, great, we'll send you more leads. And then, of course, you have your reviews component, which is pretty hard to fake. Either you're a law firm that gets high marks and gets a lot of reviews, or you're not. And there's only so much you can do if you have like 25 reviews and your competitor has 200. And the so much you should be doing is getting more reviews. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And then I don't want to give too much away here, 'cause some of that is my special secrets, but in the local service ad dashboard, you got to be responsive. You got to be quick. You got to make sure you're keeping that stuff updated, and you got to make sure you're keeping your disputes, because you can't actually request that Google basically pay you back for the lead that they sent you because the lead wasn't good or they were crazy or they actually needed a different type of lawyer. You could dispute those, but I really recommend that you don't. Um, and then finally, like if you're not getting good results targeting like a small area close to you, just expand it and target the entire state. For most law firms, that's not. That's going to be something they can do easily. So those are like some more kind of fundamental tips to how to make all this stuff work. But everything Kristine and I talked about the customer service experience and the responsiveness of it, all of those signals play like this huge important role into like how much your law firm shows up in local service ads and how close it shows to the top. Because I'm looking at local service ads right now and I'm only seeing two businesses. So you have a one shot going back to M&M. Um, we need to quit. So M&M's going to date us. It's going to date us a little too. We should be talking about Ice Spice. All right, let's talk about Ice Spice. Um, but no, I'm only seeing two options here. So it's not even like the traditional mat pack. The mat pack, you get three. You could be one of the top three. This one, it seems like top two. And yep, that's hard to do.
How many reviews do those ones have that you see?
So this is another question I wanted to ask you. The ones I'm looking at, the top result has 57 and the second top result has 214. Um, which law firm are you picking? Are you just going to go with the one with the most reviews?
Hang on, share your screen.
Okay.
All right.
Are you gonna base on which lawyer is the most attractive?
Yeah.
Which one? I keep joking about I'm gonna make like a sexy lawyer calendar at one point. Anyway,
Ooh.
yeah.
Okay. So Mark and Harrison, I'm going with them. All right. Calling them up.
No,
Let's take on my
they're a big
personal.
firm down here. They're huge.
They're gonna take on my personal injury. What happened to me? I fell at work.
That's workers' comp. That's a little bit different. It's a
Oh, it's
little bit
different.
different.
Okay.
Yeah,
Personal
a
injury.
little bit.
I fell. Wait. So would that be like car accidents?
So it'll be car accidents. It'll be like anytime somebody's been injured at the fault of somebody else, and there's some negligence involved.
I'm never at fault. I'm always the victim. So yeah, I think
That's
that's
a good
what
way
will
to
take my case.
My suspicion with reviews, and I see this time and time again, is Google actually like we know the term nerfing, where like a video game will like make a character a little less effective because it's too powerful or whatever. So like I think Google is like nerfing businesses with more reviews, many more reviews than their competitors. That's why like the lawyers we were looking at, Monge and Marks and Harrison. Monge, it has 57 reviews, but he's in the first position, whereas Marks and Harrison has 214. Like my suspicion is like once we get close to the top of Google search results, like Google starts looking at these things and saying, like, one thing Google did say publicly is that basically they're afraid of letting out too much information about how their algorithm works because they don't want to be sued. They don't want all of these businesses to suddenly realize like how it's done and then them just being flooded with lawsuits because they have a monopoly on search right now. And there honestly a bunch of businesses would really have cases against them. And so like we have to speculate like how Google is deciding who gets to the top of the search result. My speculation is like they're looking at something like reviews. And it's like all things being equal about these businesses, this one has like 20% more reviews than their competitors. They probably don't need the help. Let's put them in position number two. And then
So it's
another
like a
business.
deprioritization.
I suspect that's what's going on because I search for personal injury attorney quite a lot just to see what the results come up. And then I'm seeing most reviews in the number two position. I was just like, honestly, like if you see two businesses, both of them have 5 stars, one of them has like 150% or 100% more reviews than the other one, are you just automatically calling the most reviews or are you looking at other things?
To the point that you just made, I wonder if there's a certain plateau. I wonder if they don't necessarily go off of like the Google algorithm that is what I'm talking about. I wonder if it's not just based on the number of reviews, but if it's based on an average or maybe like an incline, if you will. For instance, if the Monge firm, if they have 57 reviews and that is a lot for them here recently, based on the number of times that they've been put at the top or recommended or whatever, maybe the overall percentage shows a much steeper incline rather than a really big law firm. Like I'm just thinking of some of the ones around here that are constantly on TV and they're actually based out of St. Louis, they have a huge bucket of recommendations and reviews that they have, just giant. So 57 for them is like a drop in that bucket. Barely, barely. Like they probably had a big level of incline at one point, but then they probably are just like stagnant. So it doesn't necessarily go off of how high you are up here. But if you have somebody that's like on a much steeper trajectory, they're going to prioritize the steeper trajectory. I wonder if it's something like that.
Well, something interesting, like within SEO, we can tell, like search engines can tell the difference between brand traffic, which is when somebody searches for your business name, versus like search traffic, where they're searching for the business, right? So I wonder if Google sees a business that has 800 reviews but gets 200 web visitors a month, or a week rather, which is really low for a personal injury firm. Like let's say like you're a personal injury firm. I think Tiffany thinks she should be getting about 1,200 organic search visitors a week. Um, so if you're a law firm and you're just starting out and you're getting like 200, 300, but you have 800 Google reviews, like that's kind of like what you're talking about. Like Google is like, wow, they have a ton of reviews, but also they're not like a huge business. So that honestly must mean that they're really good. Like if you get a bunch of reviews not because you have a lot of search traffic, but organically your brand name is mentioned a lot and you're well known in the community. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have to wonder if that does play a role in it because I see firms that are like one attorney who can outcompete like those law firms running out of St. Louis who are probably advertising down where you are. Like I've seen law firms locally outcompete those firms. And I wonder if it's that kind of relationship between like how many reviews they have and just like how known they are in the community. Oh, it's interesting to
That's
think
the
about.
case. It would really make sense if a business was like, we got to get some reviews and
Really
they
is.
paid bots. Yeah. Hey, I want to get those reviews. And they pay bots to do it for them. Like that would explain why the reviews are so important, not just for people going on there and reading them, but also to prioritize your placement in the search algorithm. But as far as like what I'm basing, yeah, reviews are definitely important. And I'm not going through and I'm not reading every single one of them. That one that had like 213, I'm looking at how many, how many stars. So how many of those are real? I don't know. But I mean, they've definitely got the funding and the manpower and the know-how to put as many good reviews in there as they can. Also, there's that integrity aspect, but I don't know, like it seems like if the business is really just getting your name out there, not necessarily what you do with it. It's kind of like you're just trying to cast a really big net, and the marketing itself is the net that you're casting. And how big your net is depends on how effective you are at that marketing campaign.
Yeah. Um, well, gosh, we keep like starting off on like really good topics. That would be good for the next podcast. Hi, this is Tiffany Swedensky coming back because my editor said we needed to record an outro. So I just wanted to thank you for listening in. If you've gotten this far, I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed Kristine and hope you enjoyed listening to me as well. We are two women who just love talking about business and marketing. Kristine's great and she has a really deep background in customer service and working on the phones, which is really key to a lot of law firms who might be listening into our podcast. And for these first few episodes, I'm really going to capitalize on the fact that Kristine doesn't have a ton of knowledge about legal marketing and kind of prod her a little bit into her decision making and how she would react to various things that we see online. And also talk a little bit about just her perspectives. Next episode, we're coming in, and Kristine and I are actually going to be talking about reviews, which I know is a big, important topic for a lot of people listening. And so we're going to cover how to get reviews and the strategies we've seen to get reviews. We're going to talk about the technology behind it, how Google reacts to reviews and perceives reviews. So we hope you tune in and we hope you enjoy it, and also subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Thanks so much.